Hey everyone, this video is going to be strictly on grades. How to see grades, what do the grades mean? I'm not talking about anything else, so if you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the grades, you're going to need to go back and watch the other videos so you know what focus areas and all that other stuff is that I'm talking about. So when we go to progress over here on the left, you can see the grades over here on the right. You'll see the current grades. You'll also see what their goal is. The goal is set over in this college tab, and that's not at the beginning of the year. We just encourage everyone to create, oops, accidentally clicked it, but you can see you have grades, and it helps them pick the grades based off of the college that they select and all of that. So anyway, here are their grades. Now, this is, okay, I've already recorded this video a couple times, but I feel like I have not done a very good job of explaining all of this situation, and I've just spent way too much time talking about it. But essentially, this letter grade all boils down to you have to keep in mind that this is the Summit PLP platform was originally developed for Summit Public Schools, and Summit Public Schools does not grade exactly the same way that Rockland Academy does. Rockland Academy grades everything standards based off of rubrics, and Summit Schools does percents. So I'm going to try and keep this speech real short. This percent and this grade is computed based off of the perceived completion. See, it says you are on pace to complete of power focus areas, additional focus areas here, and the project cognitive skills scores and this percent. So they're getting this 71% by, weighting this 100%, 0%, and this 72%. And we don't do that. So last year, I had a couple parents, and they were worried that I was telling their kids that their grades don't matter, because I would say that this kind of, this C minus doesn't matter to the kids. And I did explain it in more detail than just that to them. But it essentially means, if you're looking at these grades and you see C's, you know that you definitely have room to improve on. If you see an A, you know that you're doing well. But what we are trying to do is really give them something more than you have a C. What does a C mean? You're not understanding about 25% of that content. So what can you do aside from just saying, I'm going to study more and try harder next time and score better? Well, what does that mean? What are you going to study? So when the grades that we report on, if you go to English 9, are none of this is reported on. What is reported on, you won't see the percents and the letter grades. And if you come from Rockland Academy, you know this. You've seen on your report cards forever 1s, 2s, and 3s. And it's very similar to that. If you haven't come from Rockland Academy, then just know that all the other grade levels, they get 1s and 2s and 3s. 3s are proficient, 2 are progressing, 1 is not progressing. So the theory is the same, the rubrics have different numbers. So in English 9, we are using this cognitive skill. So most of the scores are going to be cognitive skill on this cognitive skill rubric. This cognitive skill rubric goes from a 1 to an 8, and it kind of has a moving baseline depending on what grade level you're at. So you can see how this little A+ here is over the 5.5. Ninth graders, that's where this demo is, ninth graders are expected to get up to a 5.5. That's basically considered 100%. They can get higher and they can get lower than, they could get down to a 1. But we're shooting for 5.5s in ninth grade. In 7th grade, this little A+ would be above the 4.5, because when we're talking in 7th grade, we're always saying, you guys want to shoot for a 4.5, or I just say 5 to push them a little bit more. But, you want to shoot for looking at that 5 on that rubric. So you're bringing in some of those pieces of the 5, so you're getting in between the 4 and the 5. So you'll find that depending on what grade level you're at, the scores are going to be either more down here or even way up here. 8th grade, if you're in 12th grade, you want to be way up here. If you're in 5th grade, it's way down here. So, but all that to say is, the C minus, you have this 29%. you can look at the C minus and say, son, or daughter, you have some work to do. You have a C minus, but you want to keep it in mind as a parent that they won't ever see that C minus. So what you really want to do is dive down into the scores and say, I'm noticing you just did this project and you got a 3 in conventions, and you're supposed to be getting a 5.5 in conventions. We definitely need to be working on conventions, and we definitely need to be working on style and language. Now, narrative could be better, yeah, and so could theme and central idea, these skills, but they're not as pressing because maybe these just aren't doing as great as they could because we're having a really hard time with the style and the language of the text we're reading, or just the conventions in general. So these are really what you want to look at, and in helping your child and seeing how they're doing is these scores down here. Let's look at another example. So we'll go to Modern World. So you can see here again, these are a little bit more clustered right here. Again, you can just see the C. We have some work to do, but like in what? What are we actually working on in Modern World? But you can see, again, here's the theme and central idea again in Modern World, and it's a 4. And we have discussion and contribution, norms and active listening. So, to me, this would be like a discussion about, well, are you having a hard time following the norms that your group created and listening and participating in discussions, because maybe that had an effect on the grade that you had even here. Maybe you not participating in those, in the, like listening and discussion really affected you understanding the theme and the central idea. So maybe this could have been higher if you were doing better at these skills. So these are the ones you want to work on. So you can see that these subjects, here we go to biology, and it's still that cognitive skill rubric, but you can see here we have some 5.5s. We're doing better at here. Norms and active listening is actually a 5.5 in this project in biology. So you might see cognitive skills in different subjects where they have different scores, and that's because they're kind of kept there, and at the end of the year we normally average them out together. And so it's important to have active listening in all of your classes, not just biology. And these little dots over here I haven't mentioned just say how many times that grade has been assessed. So towards the end of the year, you might see that there's, say, like 3 dots here. And that means that the norms and active listening skill had been assessed on 3 different projects. So let's get out of here. The only other thing to talk about is math. And math is, they do have the concept skills, the cognitive skills for the projects that they do in math. But typically in math, there's actually more concept units that are taking place instead of projects. And because we try to incorporate the math concepts within the science projects, and there's just more math concepts. So the math concepts, you have a slightly different rubric, and this one's actually always 1 to 5. So regardless of the grade level, for a math concept unit, you'll see a rubric of a 1 to 5. And if all the numbers are just overwhelming, which I totally understand, it's really just helpful to, if you're like, what are they supposed to be getting? Just look for this A+ at the top again. This A+ is over the 5, and if you divide 100% by 5s, it's basically 4 would be like 80%, 4.5 would be 90%, and so you can see you're shooting for a 5. For the cognitive skills, here's that A+. You want a 5.5 in 9th grade. But here you can again see this is a great example of, you have a 72. So, well, what do we need? What do we actually need to work on, though? On that report card, you're doing really good on these functions, and you're going to get 5s on your report card here. But how do we get all of these scores on your report card up? Well, maybe this skill down here, solving, is really what we need to focus on, because you have a 1. It's clear that you're really struggling in this concept right here. And so maybe that one is also adversely affecting these other scores too. So this is definitely a skill we want to work on. This represented graphically at a 2. That's something we want to work on. It's just a lot more detail than a simple C gives you. So there is that. that's pretty much it overall. I'll just really quickly remind you if you want to see how to view the individual grades. But that's basically all for that. So to view individual grades, if you're still hanging on, is for projects and concept units, you would just click on a completed project or concept unit. So we could go to this personal narrative here, and I'll say view scores. You could hit view scores. You go over to cognitive skills, and it will have the scores right over here. And you can click on it even further, and it gives you the rubric. You can also click actually on the projects and hit cognitive skills. It takes you to the same exact screen. Just they have this shortcut once it's been graded. Same exact thing for the math concept units. No, you might actually, if I'm going back here, one room for improvement, I think, on the PLP might be to actually be able to tell what the difference between a project and a concept unit is in math, because some of these, they all look exactly the same. But really the difference is normally concept units have a performance task, and it says math concepts over here. They're being graded on math concepts, not cognitive skills. But you could hit view scores, hit there, and in the upper right hand corner again it just says math concepts instead of cognitive skills. And you can always view the rubric down here. And actually, if you're in a project where it's cognitive skills and you hit view rubric, you actually can change the grade level focus. So you can hit grade 9, and it kind of jumps to the 3 to the 6 range, because that's typically the ranges you'd be seeing at that level. You know, if you're in 7th grade, it hops you to the 2 to the 5 range, because those are your typical ranges you're shooting for. But again, you know, you can get, in 7th grade, you could get higher than a 5, and you could get lower than a 2. It's just, you're going to be falling in here most of the time, because at those grade 7 skill levels. So that's it. I hope that helps understand grading.